Hello, everyone. My name is Maureen McDowell, and this is episode 16 of Typewriter Talks. I am the founder and executive director of Keep St. Pete Lit. We are a literary arts organization located in St. Petersburg, Florida. And with us today, we have Mr. Bill DeYoung, who is not only a journalist, he's also written 3 nonfiction books and has a play that has yet to premiere. Is that correct?
Well, it was going to premiere in May, and we were all worked up about it. It's a one-person show that I'm not acting because I'm not an actor. Depends on who you ask. And we didn't get to do it. May was the anniversary of the event on which it is based, and we were going to do it on the anniversary. But maybe we'll do it at the next anniversary next year. I hope so.
So is it a secret what the play's about?
No, it's not secret. You just didn't ask me.
Oh, look at you, Mr. Journalist.
The play is called Mayday, Captain Laro and the Skyway Bridge. And John Laro was the harbor pilot who happened to be piloting the ship called Summit Venture that hit the Skyway Bridge in 1980. And the first book that I was fortunate enough to publish is called Skyway. And it's essentially the story of Captain Laro and the story of what happened and what didn't happen, and kind of what we're all left with. So the 40th anniversary was approaching this year, and I wrote a series of stories in the Catalyst about the victims' families and people remembering hearing about, and all that, which is something I didn't do a lot of in the book, and I've since met a lot of victims' families, and but I was thinking of what else can I do that would kind of commemorate the 40th anniversary. And that's where this idea of a play came in, where Captain Laro, who is a great tragic figure of Shakespearean proportions, because it wasn't his fault, folks, but he got, pillarized and became the scapegoat for the whole thing, where he would talk to the audience and say, this is what I went through.
Oh, wow.
He died a very sad death about 20 years later. So that's what Mayday is. It's essentially John Laro, Captain Laro, talking to the audience.
Yeah, I think when they ask those questions, if you're from St. Petersburg or this area, like, do you get chills when you go over the Skyway Bridge? Like,
of course,
even the current Skyway Bridge. Like, I mean, so that was 86. So
no, it was 1980.
80.
So 40 years ago. So you were here, or you were maybe not here then, but you were around.
Yeah.
You remember the old bridge.
Yeah.
The 5-degree incline was much more intense, let's say, than it is now. They evened it out a little bit. So, and there were no lights. There was never any lights on top of that bridge, 2-span. So if you'd go, I have memories of going over it as a teenager, and you're stupid and you're drinking in Sarasota and it's 2 in the morning, coming back home in a rainstorm, crossing the old bridge with no lights, 8 million feet in the sky, and the wind would blow and it would sway. I mean, that was a damn scary bridge. And so over the book Skyway came out in 2013. And I think since then I've done probably 100 talks on the bridge. I do a multimedia thing where I sort of show video with Walter Cronkite announcing it and all of that, and talk about Captain Laro and a lot of this sort of fallacies that still exist and stigma about Captain Laro and the things that people never really understood about it. So I find myself unwittingly becoming like the Skyway guy.
You helped to get a plaque there to commemorate it also.
We did that. Yeah. The memorial that we put up in 2015 on the 35th anniversary, we crowdfunded that. It was $10,000 and people were, quick to help us put that up, and I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get the state to actually agree to let us do it, and they would only let us do it if we paid for it and if we gave them $1,000, which they still have, just in case they ever have to move it. But now, I don't know if you've been out there. It wasn't easy, but we did it, and I don't know if you've been out there, but they've put a little park around it now. They're like contemplating benches to sit and look into the sunset with the thing here and planted some palm trees. That's really nice. I mean, when we put it out there, Maureen, it was just a stretch of dirt and oyster shells, you know. And they basically put this little park all around it now. So I'm proud of that. And you know, when we dedicated it in 2015, a lot of the victims' families and friends came. We had people from California show up, people from Canada. We had 250, 300 people out there under tents, and Mayor Kreisman spoke and when we dedicated it, and it was really nice. So you know, that I'm very, very proud of. If I'm going to be the Skyway guy, I'm happy to be associated with the memorial, which, folks, is on the north side, the rest area, the new rest area, just a little bit south of the Coast Guard Memorial for Blackthorn, which is there, if you know about that. Rest area, north side.
Wonderful. So it's interesting that this story kind of hasn't died down for you. Like, even though it, you know, 40 years ago it took place, and then you did the nonfiction book, and now you're kind of the spokesperson, and then you did a plaque, and then, but you still felt that you needed to tell his story.
I'll tell you something. One of the things that I hear a lot is Facebook seems to be where we all talk these days, you know, and I'm a part of the Remember Old St. Pete groups. And if you grew up in Pinellas County, do you remember all that stuff? And I do these vintage St. Pete stories for the Catalyst now, and I put them there. And it's great fun to talk about things in our collective past. But inevitably, somebody who isn't me will put up something about the old Skyway Bridge. And you get that whole sort of cavalcade of, I remember how terrified. I used to go over on a motorcycle and scare my girlfriends, and, you know, we fished off of it, and all sorts of things about people who remember. Inevitably, though, somebody will say, yeah, remember when that drunk guy driving a ship knocked it down? They still say that. Well, one of the things that I discovered in my research on Captain Lara was not only was he not drunk that morning, but he didn't drink. He did not drink. He didn't even drink coffee. He was a professional who got a really raw deal. And so it seems to have become part of, you know, my mission, if you will, to, you know, clear his name.
Yeah.
You know, I know that his family was very reluctant to talk to me. Even after all these years, that stigma remains. How could somebody do that? How could somebody, you know, it was 20,000 tons of steel, and it was a blinding rainstorm. If you were here, you remember that day, May the 9th, 1980.
I don't remember, but you told me the story.
Yeah, but how, you know, what was wrong with this guy, you know? So
he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
You asked me to read something today, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the part of the play that I have called up here is where he's talking about what we were just talking about.
Well, we usually do it at the end, but, you know.
I'm happy to do it at the end. I'm
unconventional.
I'll do whatever you want me to do, Maureen. So
let me ask you. So,
yeah.
Do you see more plays in your future? Because you're primarily a journalist, but how do you juggle these three worlds? Do they inform each other, these three different types of writing?
Well, I love the theater, and one of the things that I've been fortunate to have happen to me since I came back to St. Petersburg is writing for the Catalyst, and to be able to go to job site and American Stage and Free Fall and Stage Works in Tampa Rep, and be able to and to see the amazing work that they do. And, you know, they're not all amazing, as they'll be the first to admit, but a lot of it really is. I'm not a critic, which is also a blessing. I just get to go and see the shows for free and talk to the people.
A wonderful theater community
we really do.
Yeah.
And I did a little acting in Savannah. I was part of a repertory company before we moved back here. And I've done a couple of plays with the Gulfport community players, and they're wonderful people. So I think theater's always kind of been hovering around there. And I literally was just, what would I like to say now that it's 40 years that I haven't already said? And it really was just, let's see if we can't speak through John's voice.
I like that.
And
yeah.
So he is.
Figure out where you're leading with the story. What's your anchor? Yeah.
We, you know, Roxanne Fay, and Roxanne and I become friends, and she agreed to direct it May Day. And so she's directing it, and the actor is a friend of mine, Michael Horn, that I know from Gulfport, And so the three of us got all worked up. They started working together. This was pre-virtual everything. And they started working on it together. And Roxanne likes the book, which I was lucky that she did. And so we were ready to get started when, you know, the curtain fell when the pandemic hit. So what we ended up doing was we produced I think it was a 20-minute video, which is essentially the first 20 minutes of the play, which is 75 minutes of just Michael talking. And we literally went to the stage at St. Pete Opera, which is where we were going to produce it. And we social distance, and I got Joel Friedman, who's a great videographer, to shoot it. And that's what we did on the anniversary, is we put the 15-minute video out. And we're all still in contact saying, well, one day, maybe on the 41st anniversary, we will produce this live. Hope so.
Fingers crossed, right? Everybody in the performing arts are kind of just waiting for the green light again.
One thing I've noticed doing the Catalyst sessions, I think we're on 85 shows. You're on it coming up very soon, and I think you might be 81 or 82. Anyway, one thing I've noticed is the idea really was to talk to folks in the arts community, thinking in the beginning, well, this will be a couple of weeks until they figure out what to do. And everybody in the beginning, we were all talking about Tiger King and being really funny and everything. And it's really interesting. Middle period, Eric Davis and Stephanie Gallart and all these people were talking about, okay, well, once we come around this corner, here's what we're going to do. In the meantime, we're starting this virtual programming, and there's a lot more resignation in there now. I'm starting to return to talking to people again.
Yeah.
Matthew McGee in the beginning was very jolly and, well, it kind of stinks, but here we are. And I spoke to him a week or two ago, and he's like, well, I'm doing all my virtual auditions now, and everybody's kind of resigned to the fact that it's going to be a long haul, and it sucks. And that's all I got to say about that.
Interview over. No.
Yes. Right. What else can you do?
What else? So what are you working on right now? So you're a regular writer for the St. Pete Catalyst.
The Catalyst. I'm senior writer and editor, which is a title we just sort of made up. Yeah, it sounded good, you know. I guess I run the art section. I'm kind of the only person that writes for it.
So it'd be by default? I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry?
You're by default? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I guess it's me. I got an office and everything. And yeah, that's what I do. And the Catalyst sessions, which we do 5 days a week, has been a real, I don't know, lifesaver is the word, but it gave, with not much of an arts community to write about.
Yeah. It
gave me a way to keep us all connected.
Yeah.
And keep me connected too, and contributing something to the Catalyst every day other than, you know, editing, because I edit everything, and you know, keeping our eyes open. So, you know, I cover different things. I cover the new Pier. That's kind of my beat. And some other things around here, but mostly it's the arts, and everybody's kind of hibernating out of necessity. But it's great to like here you are in a little window on my computer. I know you're out there.
Yeah. So tell us about the Vintage St. Pete column you're working on.
Oh, it's great fun. I started the same thing that drove me to write the book about the bridge and the book about Phil Gernhardt, the record producer, is just the same thing that drives you as a journalist. I've been doing it a long time. You have an insatiable curiosity about things, right? Roy Peter Clark will tell you the same thing. Klinkenberg will tell you the same thing. You know, Pittman's a great example. It's like, really? You find something, it'll gnaw away at you until you figure out what it's about, right? That's what the Vintage St. Pete series is for me. I would drive down 9th Avenue North and think, yeah, my sister used to roller skate at Gabe Lade's roller rink. That was right in here somewhere. And now it's, you know, it's a hospital that's closed now too. But, and you go, well, what was up with that? And so what I used to do is go to the public library and look up the microfilm, the old times, because it's indexed. There's an incredible index card system, or what, Dewey Decimal, or whatever you call that thing.
Yeah.
It's like totally archaic. And now you can't do that anymore. But there's a thing called newspapers.com where you can search the old St. Petersburg Times by date, by subject, which is just as good. And I don't even have to leave my house.
Yeah, I think St. Pete Preservation, are they still called that? Preserve the Bird. Sorry, Preserve the Bird. Mm-hmm. Posting old newspaper articles. I looked up one about this house, like when it was built, and you know, it's cool to put
that's Monica Kyle's thing, right? So Monica, I briefly wrote for Creative Loafing, and one of the things, that's where I met Monica. I think she was still with Ollie at the time, maybe not with Preserve the Bird, but I can't remember. But she did like a bus tour of old St. Petersburg, and would tell you about architecture and what this used to be, and that really got me thinking about it, you know. And so from there, with regard to the catalyst, I was like, oh, I'm curious about gay blades, or I'm curious about. Somebody told me that there was a movie studio on Wheaton Island in the 30s. Yeah. Really? So you just start digging. Mm-hmm. And to me, the best kind of features journalism, which is what I've always done, is like your enthusiasm for that kind of archaeology, whatever it is, you know, whether I'm talking to a musician or anything, if you can get your enthusiasm over to the people who are reading it, you know, you're a conduit between your subject and them, you know. And I'm a filter, and I'm enthusiastic about it, and you want to ask the right questions. And I think, what would I want to know? What would I want to know about Fort Dade and Fort DeSoto? What would I want to know about the London Wax Museum that was here when I was a kid, you know? So hopefully by the time you get those out, you've answered all those questions. So, and discovery. I did a peer history thing and just learned all kinds of amazing stuff. Mostly stole it from Monica. Hi, Monica. You know, put it in my own words.
Her lovely husband, John Kyle, is on our board.
Oh, they're great. Yeah, great people.
I call him my work husband. So
there you go.
Thank you to both the Kyles for all they do for the community. So you've been you've been a journalist most of your life. Mm-hmm. And you were a musician. You love music. That's a big part of your.
Oh yeah. The only reason, if anybody who's at least started as a music journalist, if they tell you that they got into it for any other reason than to get free records in the mail, they're lying to you. That's why you did it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, wait a minute. You mean if I write down my opinion about this Hall & Oates album, the record company will send me everything they put out, thinking maybe, that was an incentive, you know, just like anybody who tells you they got into being a rock and roll musician for some aesthetic reason is totally bullshitting you. They got into it to meet girls. That's the only reason. It's totally true. And ask anybody, you know, ask anybody from Ronnie Elliott on to Mountain Hall or any of these guys. Really just impress women. It's true. And here we are all these years later, we're kind of like stuck, you know. I play a little guitar. I'm a writer. Who knew? I really was just trying to avoid having to get a real job all those years.
So what advice would you tell your younger writer self?
What advice would I give my younger self? Check your ego at the door. It's not about you. It's never about you. And I think we all kind of battle with that to some degree, you know, to not have any kind of sense of self other than as a vessel for what you're writing is really important. And, you know, I think all of us at one time or another go through like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I just came off as real. Can I say jerk? I was going to say the other word, but yeah. And a lot of things I regret just about the way I handled things, you know. In the early days, a friend of mine, Bill Templeton, who's still out there, I haven't seen him in years. Hey, Bill, out there in the world. He discovered that he could get free records in the mail by writing about music, and he was able to convince somebody or other who had a tie to publishing to start a local magazine about St. Petersburg Clearwater. You didn't call it the Bay Area then, because nobody gave a shit about Tampa, and it was all over here. Well, am I allowed to say that? I don't know.
You've already cussed several times. Just
all right. So we did that. Bill did that, and since I was the only guy he knew who had actually had a byline, I'd been published in the Times a couple times when I was 17, 18. He says, "Come in and write," and this was how the whole thing got started. We started a magazine in 1980 we called it, and I'm not kidding you, called Rocks Off, which is the first song on Exile on Main Street.
80s. It's very
it was the first song on Exile on Main Street by the Rolling Stones, which is one of the great rock and roll albums. It means absolutely nothing as the name of the magazine. It was stupid, but we had some big egos on us, you know. And we did that for a year. Covered the local bands who were happening around here. We reviewed records so we could get the stuff free in the mail. And Eric Snyder, who's still around here, joined us that first year. And hey, Eric, if you're out there. And so we did that. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know, not too many people know this story. But the end of 1980, I was getting ready to move to Gainesville to go to college. I was going to have to leave anyway. But I had a huge falling out with Bill, who was the boss. We made up years later, and I wrote for years and years. He later changed the name of the magazine to Music, which is what everybody will remember it as. That's how I met Bob Andelman and a lot of wonderful people over the years. But I had a falling out with Bill because I was 20, I think, and I was trying to get into some show in Tampa, you know, get in free because my name was on the thing. And I had a girl with me, and I didn't want to be embarrassed, and my name wasn't on the list. And I threw a conniption fit, you know. That was such an important lesson to me. Like, what do you mean you don't have my name? Don't you know who I am? And that was the only, I'm here to tell you, viewers at home, this is the only time I've ever done anything like that. And basically they called Bill and said, "Who is this jerk?" And he fired me. Again, we didn't talk 3 or 4 years after that. You know, I moved to Gainesville, that whole part of my life happened, but I never forgot the lesson I learned from that, how small I felt, and this is the moral to the tale I was just telling you, which is, it's not about you. Leave your ego at the door, you know. And I learned it that day. I literally learned that the hard way. It was the Agora Ballroom in Tampa, for all of you folks out there who might remember that. And so, you know, it's never about me. And that's why, like, you've seen me out, Maureen, at like social things. I don't mingle. I don't, you know, I'm kind of very unassuming. People think I'm going to be very forward and asking questions all the time. I can do it here in this context. I can do it over the phone, but I'm not a very social person, and I don't like to put myself forward. I don't MC shows, you know, I don't have that kind of personality.
Mm-hmm. It takes.
Whatever the question was, we went a million miles from it. I'm sorry.
No, but you're a storyteller. It's all good.
Yeah.
You know, so it sounds like your curiosity has pretty much been what led you. I mean, obviously your work, because you're writing a column a day almost, right? Or you're doing.
I had to put out in Gainesville 20 years and change that I was the arts editor, so I had to put out the Friday magazine every week, plus write. I mean, I wrote 3 or 4 pieces in that every week. I had to kind of collate and edit everything that all the writers who worked for me did, to work with all the photographs. And this is pre-internet, folks. Well, the internet was around later years, but and also write for the feature section, you know, like the Sunday feature section. So that's where the work ethic comes from newspapers. And anybody who's worked in newspapers will tell you, when you have to get it done, you learn how to do it, you know, and that's where that came from. It was like, okay, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done.
Was it harder to transition to a longer model with your nonfiction books?
Definitely. Definitely. I wanted to write a book for years, and was sure that I didn't have it in me, that I didn't have the discipline, that I didn't have the patience, you know. And Skyway took, in total, about 2.5 years, and there were several periods during that time of at least 5 or 6 months when I couldn't look at it, when I decided that I was a hack, that I had no business doing it, that there were real people out there writing real nonfiction books, and what business did I have? But what would happen inevitably was I'd get an email or a phone call from somebody I'd been trying to reach during the time I was actively into it. And I never heard from them. But they'd call me and say, okay, I'm ready to talk about Captain Laro now. And my enthusiasm would get rekindled.
Yeah.
And you know, and then to be honest, another thing that happened, it was maybe half done or 3/4 done, but I was contacted by University Press of Florida. Tell us about this project. And anyway, they bought it. It wasn't quite, I sent them like part of it, and yeah, we want this. So there's your great incentive.
Yeah.
You got a deadline, and I'm a newspaper guy, work on deadlines.
They'll always give Bill DeYoung a deadline.
Well, I think that if that hadn't happened, I'd probably still be writing the damn thing now, you know, because you're never happy. I put out a vintage St. Pete, Monday, which is when we're recording this, on the Catalyst today about Tiki Gardens, which is out, you know, out in Indian Rocks Beach. And I was tweaking, not the story so much, but the photographs last night at about 11 o'clock. Yeah, I had it all ready, but it was like, I just want it to be, you know, and there's such a thing as overdoing it, you know, and I think that after so many years of doing all this stuff, that I know when to stop. I like to think I know when to stop. I don't know. You should go take a look at it and tell me if there's, you know, too many pictures of tikis in it or something. I don't know.
It's funny because I always notice, because growing up in John's Pass, like every bar had a tiki in the corner, and they were always the chainsaw tikis, but maybe all tikis are done with chainsaws. I don't know. In my world, they are. And there's a guy on, is it Central Avenue? Like he's got tikis he's selling right in his yard.
Oh yeah.
That you just drive by and you know, like I would be interested to go like, well, what got you into being the tiki guy? Like,
well, you know, here's the thing. This is what I found out, because I found John Bortles, hi John, who's the great Tiki Gardens kind of expert. You know, he's the maven. And he said, do you know what those cutest 10-foot tiki heads there? They were made of plywood and chicken wire and stucco. They were just formed on site. They weren't. So in other words, when they tore the place down, you couldn't move them to like your backyard.
Yeah.
And you couldn't move them to a shop on Central Avenue. They weren't real carved tikis. They were just fakes. They were mowed down when they bulldozed the place. So you learn.
The things you learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your other two books, one is music interviews. Yeah.
Yeah, it was stuff I'd done for music magazines over the years. A lot of stuff with Tom Petty, because being in Gainesville, I had a pretty close, not a friendship, but you know, I was kind of in the orbit and talked to him a lot.
Yeah.
So that it's called I Need to Know, named after a Petty song, the Lost Music Interviews. And there's stuff I did with Neil Young and with George Martin, the Beatles producer, stuff I did for music magazines. And I didn't like the idea of it kind of just getting lost, because some of it I thought with Linda Ronstadt's in there a couple of times. They're long, detailed interviews. And I just thought, if I don't do something with it, they're just lost. They're just gone, you know? And so if you care about it, it's there. If you don't care about it, you know, don't buy it.
Yeah, I could totally see you doing a vintage St. Pete book.
We just started talking about that. Actually, today.
You? Oh my God.
I must have known I was going to be talking to you.
My antennas were like, oh, how exciting. Totally.
Yeah.
That'd be so cool.
I hope we do it. You know, St. Petersburg Press is part of the St. Petersburg group, which owns the Catalyst. So it's all incestuous around here. Yeah. But we just started talking about it today. Like maybe that'll happen.
Crazy. Yeah. If you get enough of the, and it's such a trip down memory lane, because, you know, I'm 45, but I mean, you posted about the Wax Museum, and it's still like,
the Aquatarium.
It's funny, they go somewhere, you store them somewhere in your brain and your memories, and then you read it, and it's all of a sudden like, oh my God, it's so exciting. And
can I tell you one more story?
Yes.
It's another vintage St. Pete story. My sister Karen, hi Karen, she's not on Facebook. She is the national editor to the Washington Post. She started her career at the St. Petersburg Times. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner. You know, I'm the little junior journalist in the family, right? But Karen always used to tell me this story when she was, about 9 or 10, that we used to go to, it's the Tides Motel up on Remington. And I don't know if you remember this. They called it the Bath Club.
Well, it's funny because when I lived in North Carolina, I lived in this woman's house, Judy Cheney, and I believe it was her brother-in-law that owned it. And she
Wow.
actually she painted the tides. So she has this, so that would be cool if you ever do anything about the tides. So anyway,
Well, here we go, because
yeah.
when my family was down here from Chicago, and when Karen's a few years older than I am, so when she was a little kid, they had a membership to the bath club. You could go out there, and the kids could use the pool. You go to the beach, you have lunch under the cabanas, whatever, blah blah blah. Karen always told me this story. When I was a little kid, Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe were staying at the Tides, and they were out under a beach cabana, and Joe DiMaggio gave me $1 and asked me to go get him a couple of hot dogs. And I brought hot dogs to Joe and Marilyn. Always told me this story. So the curiosity in me is, over the years, it was always back there somewhere. And after I moved back here, something, I don't know, reminded me of it. And I looked it up. And they had been divorced for about 7 years. So I'm thinking, oh, Karen's got it all wrong, But what I didn't realize, and I started looking into it, was that after she and Arthur Miller, who was her next husband, divorced, and she was going through some emotional stuff, and it was about a year before we lost her. DiMaggio was here doing batting practice with the Yankees. He was a coach then. He wasn't on the team. He brought her with him, and they spent, I think it was a week at the Tides.
Yeah.
Because she was emotionally distraught and having all kinds of problems, and they were very close.
I think that she was institutionalized for a bit, and he got her out. There's something.
It was right, but yes.
He was her person.
Yeah. So I found all this out, and okay, there's a vintage St. Pete story, and I found, Facebook. There's a Remembering the Tides Motel group,
of course,
and I found people who'd worked there and remembered this. I can't remember who else I talked to, but I ended up writing the story about it, and research. Went back to all the old newspapers, and exactly when they were here, and the day she arrived, she came out and talked to the news media, Channel 13 or whatever it was, on the sand, and got all that stuff, and we got a really nice photograph from Getty Images, and I interviewed my sister, and she told her hot dog story, and she elaborated on it. She said, well, you never really asked me the rest of the story, but we were little kids. We all knew they were there. And so we were just walking back and forth on the sand, trying to pretend we weren't staring at them when he called me over. So it made a nice little story. So that's where they come from. I remember the Aquatarium and the Wax Museum, and, I wrote about, I wrote about the Babe Ruth and Al Capone and the Gangplank nightclub and all of that kind of stuff. Something goes, oh, I want to learn about that. So I learn about it, then I get to share it with you if you're interested, and we go on this little adventure together.
I'd love to hear something like really extensive about the Manhattan Casino, because my grandparents, Wilson and Lorraine Hubbard, used to come from the beaches and go and see like Louis Armstrong and all these people.
That's definitely on the list.
And I think about them all dressed to the nines, because that's what you did in the days, and seeing these amazing musicians in South St. Pete, which it's still very segregated, but it was really segregated then. And just coming off the beaches with, if you're beach people, you never really did. And I just think that would be so fascinating to really like dive in.
That's where the cool music was at the Manhattan Casino,
Yeah.
And like Louis Armstrong would play the Manhattan Casino, but he'd also play the Coliseum over here. Totally different show.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I used to hear about that stuff all the time. There's a great book by my friend John Capoya called Florida Soul. And that's about, the Chitlin circuit and how it, Florida R&B artists on the Chitlin circuit and how it affected everybody. And there's a fascinating book. There's a plug for John right there. What else can I tell you?
So one more question, and then we'll have you read a little bit of yours. What would be your holy grail piece of writing advice?
Oh boy. Write the way you think. I guess the truth behind that is find your voice, your actual true voice. You know, the stuff that I write, whatever it is the way I talk inside my head. You know, and that it took a long time to develop that, but I think the seeds were there. It's probably why I never got a job at the Times or the Orlando Sentinel or the really big papers, because you know I wasn't writing for them. I was kind of writing for me. You know, but I figured out a way now to kind of get somewhere in the middle where I'm still happy with it. You have to be happy with what you write. You know, journalism students would come to work for us, and you know they'd be interns and stuff, and it's like, well, I can tell that you wrote this really quickly because you had a deadline, but it seems to me you don't really understand it. You're just doing a job. And I said, if I can tell, don't you think most of the people who are going to be reading this can tell? Be true to yourself. That's the advice.
And I love the fact that you've carved your own path. You know, like you had this kind of rebellious spirit, and knowing you also.
I wanted to be a guitar player, but I wasn't good enough. I just wanted to be a musician, you know, and I wanted to at all costs avoid being the guy out at the Bilmar in the Hawaiian shirt singing Margaritaville around the pool, you know.
Me too. Yeah. Keep St. Pete Lit kind of got started because I didn't want to work in a t-shirt shop, so I'd have time to write.
Right.
I actually did work in t-shirt shops in Johns Pass.
We're kindred spirits. Yeah, you know, and that, because I mean, you and I are both natives. We could have both been that person.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have been that person.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we both came out the other side. Look what you're doing, but I'm doing it.
Keep up to keep St. Pete Lit. So okay, so share us a piece.
Okay, I'll read you a little bit of May Day.
Yeah, this is your play, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Okay. Our son Charles, we've always called him Chance, was in the 8th grade. When he got on his bus that morning, the other kids were talking about the accident. I guess the news was already on the radio. So even before he sat down, somebody says, "Hey, Laro, do you think that was your dad?" and shit like that. And worse, they wheeled in one of those big black and white school TVs on a cart and watched the coverage all morning. And eventually he heard my name, and he knew. And the kids knew enough to leave him alone. When Chance got home that afternoon, he let himself in. Sophie was at work, and he was a latchkey kid, so he was used to it. The phone was ringing as he closed the door behind him. He answered it. "Hello?" And a woman's voice said, "How does it feel to have a murderer for a father?" Can you imagine? 13 years old. He slammed the phone down, and almost immediately it started ringing again. He let it ring for a while, and then, because he thought it might be me or his mom calling, he answered it again. It was a reporter firing questions at him, so he hung up and decided not to answer again. The phone never stopped ringing for the rest of the day. He made himself a peanut butter sandwich and sat there eating it and staring at the phone. The Pilot Association attorneys put the three of us, me, Sophie, and Chance, at a motel across town under assumed name. The phone literally never stopped ringing, and reporters were camped out on our front lawn. They all took their shots at me, the newspapers, the TV people, especially the talk radio guys. There was no internet then, so this was the court of public opinion. The letters to the editor were brutal. They called me a drunk. Well, I don't drink, I never have, so they could go f themselves. And when it got out that I'd been a ballet dancer at one time in my life, they insisted I was, well, a faggot. That's what they said in those days. That's the word they used. How could any rational, intelligent, sober man drive a 20,000-ton ship straight into a fixed bridge in the middle of a bay? There'd been a lot of accidents, dozens every year, involving piloted ships on Tampa Bay, most of them minor. You push over a port piling when you have to dock in high winds, or you might just scrape a tugboat if you pass too close in a tight channel. Cranes get bent, antennas fall off, or you ground out. It's an inexact science. I think that's enough.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it gets pretty emotional. Towards the end, John Laro developed multiple sclerosis and had to quit piloting. And towards the end, he was seriously questioning his faith. He was a long-time Catholic and question. That's all true, by the way, all that stuff about the phone call with his kid. That's all in the public record. It's all in the book too. But his last years were fairly tortured, and he towards the end of this play, he's like screaming at God, and it gets pretty good. So when you see Michael Horn do this, he's amazing, and I hope that we will get to put it on. So
I love the perspective of the child, because my child's 14, and just the evilness of these people calling and asking a small child, like, how does it feel to have a father that's a murderer? Like,
yeah.
It just puts you as the viewer, the listener, right in the scene, and you immediately start empathizing for not only the child, but him as a father and as a parent. So just the wake, to use like a poetic reference to the whole thing, just the wake of this event.
If I can tell you, it gets worse. John and his wife split up. She leaves, and his son didn't talk to him for a couple of years. They reconciled, and we're very close by the time the accident happened. Not by the time the accident happened, by the time John started getting sick, and when he passed away, they were very close again. So yeah, it's tragedy on so many levels, affecting so many people's lives, and not exactly the feel-good show of the year, but and Roxanne's brilliant. I asked her because she's so good at those one-woman shows. She can put that across with her eyes, and I'm like, how do you do that? How does he bore himself into you in the audience? We don't do it through a lot of lights and special effects, although there will probably be some. There's not, a ship doesn't come out on the stage, in the back or anything, but you do it through one person connecting with an audience, making eye contact, and saying,
but I love that also, just for the fact of it is his experience. Like, he went through this in so many ways alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it's from his perspective, because you give voice to him when so many people didn't care what his voice was. And
I feel, in a way, I've said this before, that it's kind of I didn't ask for it, but I feel like it's kind of my responsibility to not clear his name so much as say, well, look, if you're interested in this story, here's the truth. And that's why I called the book The True Story of Tampa Bay's Signature Bridge and the Man Who Brought It Down. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of misinformation. If you're interested, read this, or go to see May Day when we finally do it. And this is what really happened. And it's not what a lot of people remember. It's different. Memories, fuzz over time.
Yeah, but that really talks about the power of writing, because you really can you're being an activist for him, and
it just turned out that way. I remember telling John's son that this is what I found out about him, and I didn't know. I went into it. It was tabula rasa when I went into it. If I had discovered that he was incompetent and shouldn't have been doing this, and everybody hated him because and I did find one or two people who hated him, but for different reasons. I told his son, if I'd found that out, that's what I would have written.
Yeah.
But that's not what I found out about John at all. He was a very sensitive guy.
Well, were you done? We're good?
I'm done. I'm done.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for
it's been fun.
We could keep going. I know.
Yeah.
We've had conversations where we'll keep going. So.
Okay. Well, let's go up to the book and bottom and get some coffee, and we'll keep talking.
Yeah. Well, yes, Bob. I called you Bob because I remember when I said Bob Devin Jones. His was sometimes these run 30 minutes, but other people they run a little longer. And you were. I was like, I have a feeling this storyteller is going to keep us on the line for.
Oh, has this been a long time?
No, it's not.
It's been fun.
So
I'll be talking to you sooner than soon.
Yes. So thank you everyone for being here for this episode of Typewriter Talks. I'm Maureen McDowell with Keep St. Pete Lit. You can find all kinds of events that we offer currently online at keepstpetelit.org. And once again, Bill, thank you so much. And please
Thank
check
you.
out the Catalyst sessions, which is from the St. Pete Catalyst. Bill puts one out Monday through Friday about our local art scene. So always check them out. And you
Soon to have Maureen McDowell in there before you know it.
I might be there soon. So thank you. See you next week.
Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.